Do you want to be chosen? And I don't mean this as a rhetorical question, but do you want to be chosen? When prospective clients come to your website, see your advertising, most often, not more often, but most often, they do not choose you. They choose your competitor. And some of them choose you, which is great. But what if for all the marketing efforts that you put out there, your marketing team puts out there, all the marketing dollars that you invest into getting more clients, what if more of those clients chose you? This is what Robert Friedman of Fearless Branding is all about. Tune in and listen to this podcast episode where he talks about how to be chosen more often than not. It's a great episode. You'll love it. I wish I heard this message a long time ago. It's really powerful, and I think you're going to think the same way after you listen to this episode. Enjoy. Hi there. I have a small but really meaningful favor to ask you. I watch at the stats on our YouTube channel and Spotify channel, wherever most people listen and watch our podcast, and I see that over 80% of everybody who listens to it regularly is not a subscriber. I'm asking you to subscribe to this channel. And the reason for that is my mission and the mission of my team is to help as many small law firm owners to learn how to transform their law firms into better businesses, and so they in turn enjoy better lives. When you hit subscribe button, you tell these platforms that this is content worth listening, worth viewing, and they in turn will show it to many other small law firm owners, and hopefully help me fulfill our mission of helping them create a better business and enjoy better lives. So would you please do me this favor? It would mean the world to me, and hit the subscribe button. And my promise to you is that I will continue to work hard at creating good content with practical ideas that help you and your teams grow better law firms. Thank you. Welcome to the GLF podcast. I have an incredible guest with me here today. Robert Friedman from Fearless Branding has been in the marketing world forever. Before I lose you, dear listener or viewer of this podcast, when you hear the word branding, to you, it may mean your logo, your colors, and your slogan. But if you listen to previous episodes of this show, I had Luis Scott twice on this podcast, and he will tell you firsthand that he took his law firm from $5 million to $50 million in annual revenue in sub 6 years because he focused on branding and brand marketing. Robert, welcome to the show. Please tell us what branding actually is.
Sasha, good to be here. There are a number of answers, but let's start with one. Your brand answers the question, why should we choose you? Most law firms operate in very competitive spaces, right?
Incredibly competitive.
And here's what I see. Most law firms look and sound virtually identical to their competitors, right? So when you're in law school or when you're coming up through a big firm, the conversation is often around how do we practice law at the highest level? It's not how do we practice law differently than our competitors. But when you think about it from the prospect's perspective, the perspective of the high-level buyer who is considering, how do I choose the right law firm for me or for my business? You need to be able to give them an answer. They're thinking about, well, why should I choose you? And they're in a process of, first, I'm going to just look at a bunch of firms. Then I'm going to narrow it down. And there'll be some that fall into the consideration set. I got some finalists, and then I'm going to choose one if they're serious buyers. The job of the law firm owner is to answer that question. Why should you choose our firm and not one of the competition? And that's what a brand is. And then your colors and your name and your logo, all that stuff should support how you're crafting. It's basically, look, lawyers create arguments, right? whether it be in front of a jury or whether it be, somebody on the other side of the negotiating table. You are creating a case for something. And it's the same thing for your brand. Why should you choose us? You have to create that case for it. And a generic case is not going to win.
In the PI space, personal injury space, almost every billboard you see, and there are a lot of billboards by PI law firms, it focuses on the dollar amount recovered for their clients. It is very incestuous. There are a couple that I could think of that are quite different than that. But is that what you're talking about? Like being different, standing out?
Yeah. So to go another level deeper, here is my philosophy of how to create a brand. So you said that I've been in marketing forever, and it's true. Started in big advertising agencies, then went to the client side in packaged goods, became a brand manager. My last gig was on this Nestle product called Coffee Mate. And
I heard you loved it.
It's just artificial crap. I just really didn't like it.
Yeah.
And so I thought, okay, I'm working on Coffee Mate, but somebody else is working on Apple. Somebody else is working on Nike.
Mm-hmm.
What are those brands doing to become so powerful and create such a powerful connection with their best customers? And what I saw is that they built their brand not only on great products, but those brands are built on the foundation of a single meaningful idea. Apple is the creator. Nike is actually a Greek goddess, the goddess of winged victory. It stands for winning, right? So Nike is all about winning, whatever that means for you. They then take that idea and they build a narrative, a master narrative, but then every time there's a touch point, they're creating stories that their best customers can see themselves and be a part of. And that's how some of these great brands have become so valuable. And so there's this moment in marketing history where Steve Jobs, he started Apple, he got fired, he went away. Apple brought him back because the business was about to go under. It was worth about $2 billion at the time in 1997. And he came back to revitalize the Apple brand. And he said, the way to build the Apple brand is not to talk about speeds and feeds or why we're better than Windows. Our customers want to know, who is Apple? What do we stand for? And where do we fit in this world? Those are the important things. And then he actually kind of was a fanboy about Nike. It's like the best marketing is about Nike. They don't talk about their air soles. They honor great athletes. They honor great athletics. That's what they're about, right? And so this is an approach that is built on answering the question, who are you? As opposed to, what's your stuff? What's your features and functions? So that's a long way of saying, when a firm can define a core narrative that is authentically theirs to own, right? But it tells their best clients and referral sources, here's who we are, here's what we stand for. And that narrative is different, meaningfully different than competition. It becomes a competitive advantage. So here's, my vision in the world. I see most firms talking in that we're telling everybody, like, what's our features and functions? What do we do? As opposed to who we are. And so when you can craft that powerful narrative for your firm that your competitors cannot step into, then that becomes the thing that draws your best clients to you, and that basically creates a situation where they're saying, like, it's got to be you. And I can give you
So
some examples too.
let's go there. And the reason why I want to go there is it is hard. I don't know what is the typical revenue of a listener or viewer of this podcast is, but it's usually on the smaller side of law firms. So let's say 1 million, 1.5 million, 2 million, 3 million, 5 million. This is
Mm-hmm.
not an Apple. This
Yes.
is not a Nike. These are not conglomerates. These are small business owners who happen to be attorneys who wake up thinking about their business and fall asleep thinking about their business. So it's hard to relate to those mega brands.
Yeah.
They're thinking, but I am in the legal field. We all do the same thing, charge about the same amount of money. How do I apply what you just said about Nike and Apple to what I do so that I win more cases? I get more clients. I generate more revenue. I improve my family's finances.
Yeah. The strategic thinking and the approach is available to anyone. I feel like one of my gifts is that I essentially understood what those huge global brands are doing and distilled it down so that it's simple and understandable. So that's the first thing. Those are my clients, right? The $1 to $5 million law firm, right? Like that's a sweet spot client for me. So I'll give you an example. My client, Marjorie Heinrich, has a personal injury law firm, Heinrich Law. Uh, she came to me, and I think the question is, why isn't my marketing working as well as I want it to? I'm investing. I'm doing all the right things. I have an SEO firm where I'm on Find Law. I'm on Super Lawyers. We do directory advertising. We do Yelp advertising. Why is it that I'm not getting the caliber of leads that result in clients that I know that my firm and I deserve? And what we saw when we looked at her business was that she was doing a lot of the right things, but she had a powerful story and she just wasn't telling it. And so you can look at it on Heinrich Law. I gave you this. So Apple, it's the inspiration is from the book of Genesis. It's our creation myth. Nike is a Greek goddess. So we built Marjorie's story around a retelling of David and Goliath, right? She is the warrior. Her tagline, her firm's tagline is, "We will be your warriors." And very directly created a parallel with the story. Like David wasn't just fighting Goliath because he wanted to, he was fighting for his people. And so that's what Marjorie does. And she happens to have been trained for many years on the defense side. She was a lawyer for big insurance companies. So she really understood how those Goliaths fight their battles, what they're going to do, so she can outthink them. She can anticipate their every move. And so we created a narrative that resonated with her best prospects. It wasn't a complicated narrative or something difficult to understand, but that's what it has to be. And so by telling her story more effectively, by making it more personal, by integrating what was really important to her, she now has situations where somebody would say, "Oh, I saw your bio. I read your website. What you're saying really resonated with me. Before we even spoke, I was pretty sure you were the lawyer for me." She wasn't getting that before. And my hypothesis is that most firms don't get those kind of comments because they're not telling a story that is personal enough, but not just a story that's like a fun story. It's got to be connected to the reality of the results that you produce for clients. It all has to come together, but it has to be told in an artful way as opposed to like a boring way, going back to what Steve Jobs said, like just, okay, here's our features and functions. It's got to be integrated.
Definitely. So I've been to your website and I've seen that success story. If you don't mind, go a little more granular and what is in 60 seconds or less, what is that story that she told on her website through her branding that brought in more clients, more cases, and bigger cases? Because that's what that success story is mostly about, bringing in the right type of cases.
Right, right. So just on the homepage, so the story is based on an insight, which is, and I think a lot of your PI listeners would understand this. First, somebody, just an average, ordinary person, is badly injured, or perhaps their loved one has been killed, but let's say they've been badly injured. And then they realize, oh, I'm in big trouble because not only do I have this huge injury that we have to deal with, but I now have to figure out how I'm going to get compensated. So I have this legal battle, right? Because the first thing an insurance company is going to want to do is give you the smallest settlement possible and just get you out of there, right? And that's not good for the person who has been injured. So how do I not only recover from my injury, but begin this legal fight against a giant, an insurance company, a city, a public entity of some sort, right? So we just take somebody very, very quickly through that process. You've been seriously injured. Now you're in a legal battle. You need an attorney on your side who knows how to win. We will be your warriors. So it's a very quick progression from the prospect's current state to a promise. Not just we will win your big case, but being your warrior has an emotional connotation in addition to, winning the case, winning the battle. And we have all sorts of things, in the detailed part of the story that can back it up. So for example, Marjorie recently settled a very big wrongful death case, but it was built on a previous case, also big, but not as big, where she was able to successfully sue a public entity. And so the new client saw, oh, you have experience in that. So it's all about, so one of the things is, we spend a lot of time telling her stories, defining good case studies so that potential clients can see very clearly, okay, you've done this before, and then it logically leads to why you could be the right attorney for me.
Yeah, very interesting. Huh. That makes so much sense. And here's what I was thinking about when you were saying that word warrior. And there is emphasis on that word on her website above the fold. Like when you go to her website, warrior is going to be largest font, like in your face, it's warrior. When you go to a lot of personal injury law firm websites, what they say, almost word for word, is we will fight for your rights. Like you can take 1,000 PI law firm websites, and you're going to find that that message with that verbiage is the most common one. I assume 10, 15, 20% are going to say something like that using those words, fight for your rights.
I agree with you 1,000%.
Which makes you, most of you don't remember what it is, or maybe most of you remember what it is, but haven't seen this in years, but it makes you a carbon copy of everyone else. I'm dating myself. 40 years ago, carbon copy paper, like looks the same because just copied from one to another, to another, to another. She doesn't say I will fight for your rights. She says she will be your warrior, which is the same thing, but it sounds so different. And in the world where everything looks the same, standing out, even to a small degree like this, could be a huge differentiator to when it comes to you will either get that lead or you will not get that lead. They will either become your client or they will not become your client. When you say she settled a huge wrongful death case, we're probably talking about 8 figures. Those are huge wrongful death cases. So this is a subtle difference that may result in hey, this brings in another $8-10 million a year into the law firm. That's how like a small thing can make a big difference. There was a video by I forget the name of the firm from UK. It goes back probably 15 years ago. That video is fascinating. It has to do with branding and messaging. There's a blind man sitting on a cardboard paper on pavement. There's a sign in front of him and a big mug. He's collecting coins. And it says, please help. Blind, please help. And most people walk by and some drop a few pennies into his collection cup, and most people don't. And there is a lady who walks by him, and as she walks by him, she stops, looks at his sign, whips out a Sharpie, turns it around on the blank side, and she writes something different and hands him back the sign. And while she is doing that, he's touching her feet because this is how he memorizes people who stop by. Weird, but okay. Trust me, this works in the story. So as he's still sitting there, all of a sudden he hears a lot more coins going into his collection cup. He doesn't get it. And toward the end of the day, the same lady stops by him and he touches her feet. And he's like, what'd you do to my sign? With a very British accent, which I cannot replicate very well. And she says, I wrote the same, slightly different. And what the sign said when she rewrote it said, it's a beautiful day, but I can't see it. It was the same thing. I'm blind, please help. But it's a beautiful day, but I can't see it. So there is the same sign, just on the flip side. Small difference in words, very different outcome, like very, very different outcome. So I think that video really encapsulates or emphasizes on just how powerful the right type of branding, small change, can make a huge difference to your law firm. And it's applicable to PI and every other practice area if you think about it. It's not just for PI.
It's applicable to any kind of expert.
Yes.
And so I see what you see so often, right? The same message, the one you use is perfect. I see that all the time as well. And so I feel like branding is like religion. Like I can't convince somebody who believes that starting their bio with, I went to such and such law firm, I clerked for this judge, right?
Everybody.
There's another way to tell the world about your services. But for somebody who can hear that story you told, it was a great story because you're exactly right. It framed the issue. It told a very quick story in a way that the viewer, the passerby, can start to, that person became a real person. He became a character in a story of what does it feel like to not be able to see the beautiful day.
Yeah.
And it involves the reader in a completely different way.
Mm-hmm.
And so going back to your question about, these billion-dollar companies versus smaller firms, you can tell your story in a more compelling way. It does not cost you $1 billion in your marketing department, right? Literally, that person she didn't even buy a new piece of cardboard, right? She just had the right approach and the right execution of that approach, and it was very simple, but she put it in the world in a new way.
Mm-hmm.
All of your listeners can do the same thing if they believe that the second approach will be more effective than the first. So many people are never going to make that change. They're never going to change that belief. They believe, I just need to state the facts, right? But if you believe that creating the narrative is going to be effective for you, then it will work.
Very true. One of my early marketing mentors, Dan Kennedy, 12 years ago, do you remember there was we are the 99% or the 98% movement, Occupy Wall Street, this and that. He said, look at all those people. They're right about one thing, that 98% of everyone is wrong. That's true. If you continue posting the same stuff as everybody else on the website, by the way, I raise my hand and say that I am also guilty of that. A lot of copy on our website is probably very similar to what our competitors put there. But if you do exactly what your competitors do, it is one of the original scenes of marketing, which is copycat marketing, looking at what others do, thinking that they're more successful than you. So you copy what they do without actually knowing that they're no more successful than you are. And by copying them, you're going to replicate the results that you already got before. You're going to be like everybody else. Your financial outcomes are going to be like everybody else. It's all the same, right? So you're by staying the course, you're actually hurting yourself very, very much. By the way, if you don't believe me, reach out to Louis Scott of Bader Scott. They're based in Atlanta. I think if they're not the largest Atlanta-based, I'm not talking about Morgan and Morgan size, but they're the largest Atlanta-based, I believe, PI law firm. Last I spoke to him was about a year ago. So they have probably, and they grow double digits every single year. So they're probably no longer a $50 million law firm. Today they could be 60, 65, $70 million law firm. Grow exponentially. He's like overwhelming majority of our marketing budget is in branding. That's it. We do branding stuff.
You said something. It would not be a good branding consultant if I didn't ask you a follow-up question.
Do it.
Right? So you said on your own website that many of the things you're saying are like your competitors. So is it because you don't believe that being more like so why is that without being accusatory? Why
No, be accusatory. I like being accused of stuff. I accuse myself and my team very often. And the reason why I do that is if you do not probe from within, if you do not do that hard probing, hard questions, chances are you're not going to evolve. You're going to stay the course and you're going to do okay. Like here's the thing. Overwhelming majority of this industry does okay. What does okay mean? Median salary for an attorney in the United States, according to Bureau of Labor Statistics, 2022, 2023 was something like $138,000 per year, which is quite a bit higher than an average Joe. So starting there, you're doing okay. If you own a law firm, chances are you're pulling in more than that. You're pulling in $200,000 a year. That's probably the average. Maybe 250, maybe 300, maybe 150, somewhere there. There's that glass ceiling there for most law firm owners, which I think leaves you at around 400,000. If you're a rainmaker and you do not practice law most of the time, if you go out there, build relationships, generate business, you're at 1.2, 1.5, 2 million. You are doing well. You're just not doing $50 million in revenue, annual revenue kind of well. The guy who bought into the whole thing and he's like branding is it. We have to be this to our target market, to people who get injured in Atlanta, greater Atlanta area. Because I think that's their whole focus. And I keep on using Luis' example because it's so stark and he's so public about it. He's not shying away. He will teach you, he will tell you how they did it, knowing that most of his competitors will never compete with him because one thing to know, it's another thing to do, to execute. Oh, to answer your question.
Yeah.
To answer your question. I didn't mean to avoid answering that question. So the truth of the matter is, I did not control production of our website. I did not control copy creation. In my company, and we have a sizable company, I think last I looked at the roster, we have 92, 93, 94 people, somewhere thereabout. I do not make decisions in a vacuum. There are other people who also make decisions. And sometimes because I'm not focused on some of these things, decisions will be made where I'll grind my teeth and be like, maybe that's not how I would do it, but okay, I got other things to take care of. And that's the truth. I know that the best positioning statement is that answers the question that Dan Kennedy actually trademarked. It is the answer to the question, why should I, your prospective client, choose to do business with you over all other available options in the marketplace, including the option of doing nothing at all?
Yes.
That's it. If you can answer that question succinctly, everyone who comes to your website, who is thinking about hiring you as an expert in anything, they're going to be like, aha, I want that.
Right.
I will fight for your rights because that's what everybody else says.
Yeah, yeah. You and I, this is our first conversation.
Right.
So are you the leader of your firm? Are you the
One of two. I'm one of the two shareholders. And my partner and I, I call it a perfect business marriage. We're so good together. We're like this. Almost never an argument, but we don't agree on everything. But I'm one of the two, yes.
so is there an opportunity so we can have maybe a longer conversation
There
around
is. Yeah.
what your upside is, whether it be to attract more sophisticated clients, more lucrative clients? Are there clients
There's
out
a
there that you would like to attract
there's a very
that?
low hanging fruit. By the way, folks, here you're hearing a business conversation, like possibly a prospective client, prospective vendor. So the biggest opportunity there, as far as like what you do, is if you look at statistics of our website, to say that we're crushing it on Google is an understatement. There's no one in our industry, and I mean no one, who gets as much relevant search traffic as my company does. Why? My team is insanely good at SEO. When I say insanely, I mean absolutely insanely, second to none, really good, massive amount of traffic, conversion. Why? Because they're probably coming to our website and they see that we'll fight for your rights. We'll fight for you to get more clients.
So that's the thing that I really wanted to talk to you about, like kind of to frame this part of the conversation. I would raise the contention that SEO and branding should be complementary,
100%.
but they are often not. So I'm in kind of a biz dev mode right now. And one of the
Yeah.
things that I'm doing is I'm searching for law practice name, family law attorney, personal injury, trust of states, whatever, in certain geographies. And I'm seeing who seems to be winning the SEO game. Meaning, I search and they're at the top, right? Be it organic or they're getting the right, sponsored listing. Bottom line, because I don't think the prospect really cares. They're looking, if they're searching and they're looking for a firm, they're not going to go 3 pages in and look at the bottom. They're going to look at who comes up on the top. So I see who comes up on the top, and then I go to their website and I look at their message and I say, okay, your SEO has gotten me, it's achieved its objective.
Mm-hmm.
It got me to click. It got me to look. So now we're having a different conversation, because the first conversation is you got to get me there. If I don't get there, you never had me to begin with. But if I do get there, then are you telling me as a prospect, are you answering that question exactly the way you said Kennedy framed it? Are you giving me the answer to that question? Are you showing me why you're the firm for us? And 99% of the time,
99%.
they are not doing that. So
No.
what I'm seeing is that there's this paradigm where firms are investing, they're doing the right things, and they're in fact succeeding with the SEO. But then there's this other level that I use this metaphor, it's like you're on the bike path. Are you on a beach cruiser? Are you on a finely tuned racing bike? You're doing the same number of cycles. You're spending the money.
Yep.
You're doing the work, the links, whatever is creating the success in the SEO. But are you feeding a powerful, unique story into that? And I think most of the time, no. So all these firms they're doing the work.
That's why the
They're
the
not getting that far.
99%, right? Occupy Wall Street. Right? Remember, it was called Occupy Wall Street, right? So we are the 99, or we are the 98%. Like it's the truth. Most of us, including ourselves in this specific example, we just don't do things the right way. So that's why Kennedy said, like, look the other way. Look at that 1%. They're doing it
Yeah,
right.
and I mean, I'm not trying to say like there's a whole political connotation there, but I think the key thing is that you have the opportunity to have a competitive advantage Will you do the foundational work, which, by the way, like one of the advantages of it is, unlike some of the marketing strategies and tactics, which you have to keep doing, right? The foundational work is like building a foundation. You really just need to do it once. It takes some work, but once it's there, it can support you and make everything that you do so much more effective for years. If you have the right story and you tell it and show it in the most powerful, refined way to connect with your prospects.
Yes. There's one thing that I would disagree with you. There's nothing political about what I said. I may have used a political example, but here's why it's not political. And I want to be 100% clear about this. Regardless of your politics, if you own a business, such as a law firm, you have probably put in blood, sweat, tears, money, incredible amount of effort, incredible amount of time to get to where you are today. Whether you make $400,000 a year or $4 million a year, it's the same number of hours. It is the same number of effort. You may say, like, I'm good. I've heard that before from our clients. We're like, thanks for all your efforts, meaning our efforts. You helped me get to the point where we are making $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year. I'm good. And that's cool. But if you think about it, if you work for the same number of hours, put in about the same amount of effort, by the way, a $4 million a year annual income attorney, law firm owner, works less than $400,000 a year in personal income attorney. It's a given. It is simply given. You have very different functions at $4 million than you do at 400,000. But anyway, I digress. If you're going to put in all the work, you might as well make the $4 million because maybe your annual expenses are good with 400,000. You can take that $3.6 million and feed a lot of people, build a lot of housing, help out your church, synagogue, mosque, whatever it is that you believe in. You can do so much good with that extra money. And by the way, when it comes to your time and effort, it doesn't cost you any extra. So I think you kind of owe it to yourself, to God, and to your community to do as well as you can. So you just might as well.
And that's exactly what I meant by that bike metaphor, right? You're doing the same number of revolutions.
Yep.
So where is it getting you?
Yeah. So true. So incredibly true. What's the methodology that you deploy? And if you're okay sharing this, I think sure. I kind of know what the methodology is, because for most people, as you know, who want this and can afford it, they're not going to do it themselves and for those who want to learn how to do it and don't have the money, DIY it, absolutely. So what's the methodology for coming up with great branding?
So it's actually very simple, right? My value add, is the simplicity of the methodology, but also just like earlier in our conversation, I poke and say, you know what, that's not distinctive enough. So the methodology, it is based on that insight from Steve Jobs, where he said, the way to build the Apple brand is not to talk about speeds and feeds. Our customers want to know who is Apple, right? So the methodology is built on answering 5 very simple questions as precisely as possible. Who are you? Which most firms really don't answer explicitly most of the time. And it can feel like an amorphous question, but what I mean is, what do you believe about doing your work the right way? And what are your values? And what are your values that your best prospects really would not find from your competitors? Because everybody says hard work and integrity and transparency, and right? It's like, okay, great.
Everybody.
Table stakes. It's not like they're bad values, they're good values, but everybody is saying that. So what is it that is uniquely yours when the opposite is not wrong, right? So for me, my primary value is being fearless. Look at the earlier part of our conversation. Most professionals feel more comfortable in being pretty close to what everybody else is saying and doing, right? That's not wrong. There's a lot of successful people that are just putting in the hard work And like you said, I'm good. They're happy. They're satisfied, right? So I don't want to say that one is wrong and one is right, but what is your value that you believe that your best clients will resonate with? So that's the first part, and it's the most important part, and it leads to the master idea, right? So the second question is, what do you do? So can you define, just like I'm doing now, can you define your methodology, how you work, what's important to you, that would be distinctive versus your competition, right? Those are the two questions about the business, about the brand. Then we switch to the questions about the clients. Who do you do it for? So that's the demographic and psychographic profile of your clients. So demographic is all the tangible stuff, like where does somebody live or how much money they make. That stuff is easy. But psychographic is, what do they believe? What is their worldview? How do they navigate the world at an emotional level? And you have to understand that. The next question is, what do they need or what do they want, right? So sometimes, like personal injury law, you're solving a problem. Other times you're capturing an opportunity, right? But you really, I think of it as the master problem. What is that most important thing that your best client wants, right? For me, where I'm coming to is, how do I make my marketing more effective, right? It leads to something else at kind of maybe a higher level, which is, how do we attract the bigger, better, more lucrative clients that we know we're capable of deserving? But you have to really think very deeply about, how do you want to frame that problem? Because everything you should be saying to your market should be focused on that problem. And then the final thing, it puts it all together. So you've got the business, you've got the customer, and then what do they get is the fifth question. So that's your brand promise. That's what links it all together. So that's the methodology in terms of creating the brand strategy. And then ideally, there's three components. There's a deep dive exploration with the owner of the firm, the leadership team, conversations and explorations with external stakeholders, current clients, past clients, prospects who said no, your strategic alliances, your referral sources, etc., right? And then the third piece is a competitive analysis for the reason that we talked about, because you can create the most brilliant idea that your clients are saying, oh my God, that's exactly what I want. But you fall into the trap of saying the same thing that everybody else says. An investment manager who says, I'm going to set you up for a safe, prosperous, comfortable retirement. Do you want that? Of course. But is that going to help you get chosen? No. You got to make sure you're not doing it with your blinders on. So it's those three elements. And what I usually see is, we start with the deep dive. My client has ideas. Then we go validate. Then we hear what other people are saying. There's always an insight. There's always gold in the conversations, and it helps us to refine. Then we look at key competitors and we say, okay, so what we're saying, is it relevant to our audience? Is it going to help us get chosen? Is it different than what competition is going to say? And how do we find that edge? Because you want to be different, but you don't want to be weird, right? And so I do see firms occasionally fall into the trap of, they're trying so hard to be different that they're no longer relevant, right? They're no longer on the idea that the prospect cares about, primarily. And so you have to really balance that. So that's the strategy method. And then once you have that, then okay, that's what we're going to build our narrative, our story around. And then the next step is we tell it in all expressions of what the firm puts out to the market.
I bet that a lot of people who are watching this or listening to this episode are thinking the answers to those 5 questions would be the same at my firm as they would be at all other firms. But Robert said, that with every client, with every law firm, there's always gold in those answers. How come?
Well, I want to take that back. When I do a project, the gold is when I interview my clients' clients. But so that's their clients. But let's look at the firm itself. If I ask the founder of a firm, why did you start this firm? Sometimes I hear there was something really important that I really wanted to do. I came from a big firm, or I came from, working for an insurance company, and I knew I was fighting on the wrong side. And they're very clear about why they're doing what they're doing. And then for those people, and then they believe like, okay, I do need to tell my story more powerfully. Then there's always something there. I can extract it. But remember I said branding is like religion? So then there's some other people that say, I just want to do a good job. Does it need to be different? I don't know. I just want to, I care about my clients. I want to do a good job for them. I want to take care of my family. I want to be a contributing member of my community, but there's nothing really that's powering them, it won't work for them. It's okay, and that's okay, right? Then there's other ways that person can build their business. So it really is like, what do you believe? Because, I'm just thinking about one of the first conversations I had with Marjorie, where she was looking at competitors who were getting these plum cases, and she felt we should be getting those cases. I know we have the expertise, the understanding of how to win, the resources to do what's necessary. We should be getting, and so there was a fire in the belly, right, around winning those bigger cases. And so, it really depends on who the firm owner is and what's driving them.
Yeah. I find that there is a percentage of firm owners that are really ambitious people whose appetite is insatiable, which I am definitely one of them. I'm not a law firm owner, I'm a marketing firm owner. This is my business number 4. I've been operating business for now 24 years. And the appetite is always insatiable because the biggest room in the world is room for improvement, right? So we can all improve. I believe in charitable giving, and every year my goal is to double my charitable giving. I live comfortably, but this is one of the things that really drives me. It's not another car, it's not another house, it's not another boat, none of those things. It's bigger charitable giving. So that's part of my story. So for those firm owners who are actually, I think that both camps should probably think about doing this and either reach out to you, Robert, or read something on this matter to see how well it could improve their business. So whether you're in the camp where you are ambitious, very ambitious, and your appetite for growth is insatiable, do this. And if you're not overly ambitious, but you're not making the money that you want to make because you do not have the life and you do not have the lifestyle that you're after, also do this. I assume that the investment into the right type of branding that will help you land more cases is not millions of dollars, not hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's something reasonable. If you don't mind my asking, what does your typical client invest in working with you or having you work for them and help them develop that branding that ends up lending them more clients?
There's a range.
Okay.
And I have learned to be careful about understanding the situation and defining the value of what is the upside before sharing that number. So I'm assuming you could edit this out if it's not a good answer. I mean, I'm happy to tell you.
Yeah, tell me.
Right.
Like, what's the range?
But okay. So the range is, so there's different elements of the process, right? You got to do the strategy. Then you need to create the message. Then you need to put the message in a context, right? Like be it a website or, brand assets, etc. So for a small lawyer where they just need a great story, but they're going to put it on a Squarespace and it doesn't really need to be custom, but they need to have the right message. It could be low five figures, 10 to 15,000 for a firm that's bigger, more sophisticated, multiple practice areas, lots of case studies. Then it could be mid hundreds, so that's the range.
Big range for sure, but for smaller law firms, if it
And
is,
when I say hundreds, I mean, like 120, 150, something like that, not 500.
yeah. So I'm thinking about a smaller law firm, one practice area. This kind of investment would pay for itself with lending one, two, three additional clients.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the thing that's why I think it's so important to really think about what you're committed to and what I call it your upside, right? Look at at the value of an average case. And then ask yourself the question, do you want a substantially larger average engagement size? Then the question is, what would it take for the clients that have those larger deals or cases to consider you, right? How do you show up as a legitimate alternative? And then what will have them choose you, right? So that's the process that you need to take and ask yourself the question, are we presenting ourselves in our absolute best light? Are we telling our most powerful story? And if the answer, like on a scale of 10, if the answer is 7 or below, would having that powerful story, that brand expression, help you to attract that next level of client? If so, then why wouldn't you do it? And then you have to really look, each firm has their own individual financial perspective to consider. And then you say, okay, our upside is X. Like often I might say to a prospect, do you think there's another $1 million in your firm? If you had the right story, could you attract the right profitable clients to generate, let's say, another $1 million for your firm? And if so, then we back into what's the scope, because each of the, it's like building a house or buying a car. It's like, are you talking about a 1,500 square foot house? Are you talking about a 7,000 square foot house? What's the finish? It's like there's different ways to slice the work so that it's the right fit for that client, right? Sometimes firms have, relatively big teams. We need to document everything. We need to, get lots of, like you were talking about when you were explaining why perhaps you hadn't taken a different approach. Well, I didn't take the time to get my team in alignment, didn't have the right structure. So that's very doable, but it takes a little more time. And, it means the scope is bigger. If you're a single decision maker, if you're a very decisive person, if you've been thinking about this stuff, sometimes it's like can happen really fast.
I get it. Now, when it comes to investing into your brand messaging, branding, using the example of Marjorie, how often do you change that branding? How often do you change? You never do. It's a one-time investment.
Well, you build on it, right? So we're not changing the core story. We're not changing the core idea. But each time, every time there's a victory, you tell that story. You think about how do we use that? It's like a main character who goes on an adventure, right? How many James Bond movies are there, or Indiana Jones, right? It's like you're telling the new story. So it's not like, would James Bond be so popular if there was just one James Bond movie, right? People love the character. They're invested in the character. And so we're always sending the character on new adventures. And it's kind of the same, right? It's like it evolves. But James Bond, from the very first movie to the very last one, I mean, the heart of what that character is, like the soul of James Bond, really hasn't changed. We know who he is as a man, right? And so, a lot of times I don't mean this to be a slam on SEO, but if you get the story right, it can really live in a way that the prospects can understand, and
For sure.
sometimes clients will pull back on what you have to do. So it's not, I don't want to imply that it's one and done, but that foundation does last for a
Yeah.
really long time.
Yeah, I love to work with numbers. And I know a lot of attorneys will tell you, well, I got into law, so I don't have to deal with numbers. But bear with me. Let's imagine that you made it's a one-time investment of $20,000, and you find an additional $1 million in gross revenue in your business, and it costs you half of that to deliver the service, meaning you need to spend $500,000 inside your business to deliver $1 million worth of service. That would mean that your gross profit, not revenue, gross profit after the expense of delivering the service is $500,000 per year on that $20,000 investment, which means it's a return of 25 to 1 or 2,500%. Now, let's imagine that you earn
2,500 to one, right?
2,500% per year, right?
Yeah,
But then you're not going to change that message. You're not going to change that branding every year. And let's say that your
right.
firm
It's
lives
not
for
just one
another,
time.
let's say your firm lives just for another 10 years with that messaging. At that point, it's 25,000%, but you could be using some of that money to invest into, I don't know, my favorite stock, BRKB, which is Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway, that tends to deliver like anywhere between 10 and 20% on annualized basis. It's a lot of millions of dollars. Inside my head calculator is strong, but not that strong. But let me tell you, it's a lot of millions of dollars over just a 10-year period on the investment of $20,000. So here it is, Robert Friedman of Fearless Branding. Loved having you on the podcast. Thank you for sharing all the insights. If people heard this and they started believing this, how do they connect with you?
Fearlessbranding.com, Robert at fearlessbranding.com. Let's have a conversation.
Yeah. Marjorie's success story lives on your website along with many other success stories right there. Check them out under the results section on your website. Thank you so much.
Thank you.